Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks. Welcome to Tone Talks.
What up, y'all? Tone Talks is here. Everybody been looking forward to this discussion. It's gonna be a smooth night. I think it's gonna be a good night. You know, all week everybody been talking about this hashtag, the root articles. I want to get into it. I brought my people in to do this. Some of the best. I brought Dr. Tommy Curry, author of Man Not, professor at Texas A&M. You know he gonna come with it. Dr. Curry, you there?
I am.
I brought Yvette Carnell, political commentator extraordinaire. Yvette, you there?
I'm here.
So let's just talk about it a little bit to give a framework for those people who haven't heard what happened. You know, the root, Madame Noir, black feminists, a lot of people been out here talking a lot, writing irresponsible articles about black men and the position of black men. We're going to deal with that with data today. So in response, this whole thing, hashtag the root article started a whole Twitter rampage. And they started, you know, people, black men, black women started making parody titles of like root articles that attacked African-American men in their position in relation to black women and black families. Just to give you context, not to really push these, I want to share a few. And these are the root articles, hashtag the root articles by The Realness. That was his Twitter. Black men become athletes in order to practice running away from their responsibilities, with a picture of Usain Bolt. These are funny memes. Next one from The Realness. Hashtag the root articles. Why Freddy Krueger is a much better option to be the man of your dreams than any black male. Oh, we about to get into it. The next one, the last one I'm gonna share is black men are purposely killing all the fish to unbalance the ecosystem and end the world to avoid paying child support. Hashtag the root articles. This is by Knuya. So we have this discussion of where this conversation can go, why this conversation exists. I want to deal with it in a responsible way, a healthy way, but a lot of people might get their feelings hurt tonight, especially with Dr. Curry in the building, especially with Yvette Carnell in the building, especially with Tone Talks in the building. So, Dr. Curry, I'm gonna start with you. Have you been following this hashtag the root articles? I want you to give your opinion, just a general synopsis on what you've seen.
Yeah, I've been following it actually since I think the first few days that it started. And, you know, initially I thought that it was just going, you know, a few people, you know, making fun of some of the outlandish tags, right? Because, you know, the Root also published that article, black men are the white men of the black race.
Yeah, we're gonna get into that. I have that printed out here to talk about that.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I thought this is why I think it was so powerful about it. The hashtag was ridiculing the propositions of the Root that seem to believe that black men are not only unfit partners for black women, but are in fact dangerous to black women. And what's most upsetting about the way that the Root engages this is that it has no sociological backing. It has no theoretical basis in any of the masculinity literature. It is just the brute idea that attacking and criticizing black men, even when it uses racist tropes, is somehow gender progressive. And I think that the hashtag did a very good job demonstrating that there isn't anything progressive or helpful to black women just by blaming black men. Because very few of these articles mention things like structural poverty. They don't mention things like generational abuse. They don't make the interrelationship between incarceration and female dependency, the number of dependents that black women have to take care of in extreme conditions of poverty or joblessness, et cetera, or even underemployment, working more than one job, right? So I think that it's something that the black community did to prove that the ideas that are coming out of these kind of pop culture blogs and these pseudo-intellectuals don't necessarily speak to their reality.
Yeah, man. You know, I'm gonna swing over to Yvette in a second, but let me frame this to make sure that we understand. This isn't just about the Root. We're gonna focus on the Root, but this is about Madame Noir. This is about black feminists. I'm gonna bring up a tweet from a black feminist, then I'm gonna push it over to Yvette. Irresponsibly dealing with the toxic reality of black oppression, that comes at the hands of white supremacy, and basically just avoiding truths. We look over at Jamila Lemieux, as I think of her name. Here's a tweet that she said. I see a number of folks are uncomfortable with the idea of banning R. Kelly's music from streaming services and such. Pretend he was a white guy who harmed some black men, since that's the only form of oppression some of you can recognize. This is the most bitter, backbiting tweet I've read in quite a while, and also it's horribly inaccurate. We're not talking about black men being harmed when we look at Eric Garner or Alton Sterling or Trayvon Martin. We're talking about black men being killed. And also, going even further, understand that Terry Crews had his genitalia grabbed by a white male and no one cared. So understand that when we talk about R. Kelly and these women that are in that house by choice, the reason why it's not getting resonance is because it is not equivalent. So when you use the word harmed in your tweet, you undercut the whole reality of why you wore that Black Lives Matter t-shirt. Yvette, I want to get your opinion on this whole, the root articles and where black feminism is, and just let's have this discussion.
Well, one of the things that I find problematic is how this is kind of used, or the root articles are kind of used as a dodge, right? So it's almost as if we don't want to talk about, especially black women, we don't want to talk about white women. We don't want to talk about white women who like try to be our friends, and we complain about them touching our hair, but that's as far as we'll go. We won't go any further in terms of white women and white people and white family and how they are eating off our failure. So we want to talk about black men, but we don't want to talk about, we want to talk about how we want black men to be our reparations in terms of relationships or whatever. But we don't want to talk about the systemic failure, you know, that is put in place in terms of what you talk about in terms of the incarceration rate. So what I see when I most see these kinds of articles is that you're really just dodging the elephant in the room, which is like this systemic oppression, which has targeted most of all like black men in the community in terms of these are the people that you put in cages. Like, you know, you and I talk a lot, and one of the things that you said is like that's like the second worst thing to death is to just be put in a cage and like thrown away. And so instead of talking about that, we talk about all this little stuff kind of around the edge, or all this little extra dressing, but we don't want to talk about, you know, the other part of it. But the second thing I want to say is this. Maybe I have missed out, but I have not seen, whether it be Sandra Bland or other black women, you know, who we have seen in the news, you know, die or whatever, die or be disenfranchised. I haven't seen a issue where I saw black men just like, as a group, just like ignore the plight of black women. I just haven't seen that. So part of me, what I want to try to, I don't understand what this sort of antagonism, antipathy is really about.
Yeah, man, and it's a trip being a black male. I'm an attorney. I'm here in Los Angeles, and sometimes I hear the criticism of I hear a black woman criticizing black men in a way I could be criticizing her. So I'll hear a traveling nurse. Now understand that by being a traveling nurse, you unstable. Your salary is decent to good, but you don't live in one place. You don't have a schedule. You know how hard that is to date? Now, I'm not judging you, but to hear you judge the instability of a black man that drives Uber is highly problematic. To hear you judge a black man who stays at home due to a multitude of oppressions is highly problematic. And so what we get in a large sense is a whole bunch of contradictions. Yvette just pointed one out. You know, you'll get African-American women that'll, you know, based on their view, say interracial dating is a problem. Then you go to their Facebook and all their friends, or a good chunk, are white people. You got to have some consistency in your value set. And I feel like what we're running into is an inconsistency in a value system, an inconsistency in a value ruler. And so as a result, this hashtag the root articles, in making parody, is trying to scream out, we better get this right, because this is a flashpoint. Let's get into the, you know, Dr. Craig, I want to get into the data. You know, I like to talk data, anchor the conversation, so we're not talking about emotions. Because the victimology of the whole double minority African-American women and African-American, being an African-American and a woman, it kind of falls apart when you start dealing with the data, because so much of it is rooted in just being black. So, and by saying it's about black women, you're basically trying to ostracize black men who in many of these categories are much worse off, whether it be wealth, whether it be income, and definitely when it comes to incarceration. I wrote a piece for the Griot called Incarcerated America. I want to share a brief section, then get your opinion. Before the implementation of crack cocaine sentencing and the privatization of prisons in the mid-'80s, black male prison rates hovered around the range of 1,000 per 100,000. Fueled by changes in drug sentencing and inclusion of minor crimes such as child support violations, driving with a suspended license within the umbrella of imprisonable offenses, the number of black males incarcerated skyrocketed, now sitting at 7,000 to 9,000 per 100,000, or about 8% of 20 to 39-year-old black males. Highest prior was South Africa during apartheid at around 800 per 100,000, or 0.8%. As of 2013, out of 12 million working age African-American men, 700,000 were incarcerated according to the DOJ. To give that context, out of 4 billion women on the planet, according to the Institute for Criminal Policy Research, 700,000 were incarcerated. So there's more African-American men out of 12 million incarcerated than all women in the world are incarcerated. All 4 billion. Can you speak to that, Dr. Curry, why that exists and why that's so problematic?
Well, I mean, it's problematic on a whole bunch of levels, right? But let's start about why it exists. You know, one of the things that I argue in The Man Not, and this is following the work of social dominance theorists, is that in capitalist patriarchal societies, racialized men are targeted for extermination. And I think that when we look at the data, the way that we have downward mobility of black men, how they're constantly falling out of the middle class into an underclass, the way that you have the high incarceration rate, homicide, and unemployment, that we can see that there is something about this white supremacist patriarchal society that does a huge disservice to men, often leading to their deaths when they're black. The effect of that is that you're going to have environments then, neighborhoods, black communities, black households, where black men are absent because they're being systematically eliminated from the social participation that we think black men should have as good fathers, or good boyfriends, or husbands, etc. And that's not being taken into account. What we see are pathological theories targeting straight black men, and this is very important, targeting heterosexual black men, using racist tropes that white supremacists and white social scientists have been using for decades. And what we do is we say, well, because we're attacking straight black men, even when we're deploying racist stereotypes about them being bad fathers, or them being rapists, or them being, you know, or being promiscuous, that it's okay because we're talking about straight black men. The systemic effects of incarceration and homicide means that you are taking these black men out of the community. You are taking them out of society. And the effect and consequence of that is it's going to affect the sex ratio. So if you're a black woman saying that I don't have a black man, and you blame it on black men don't love black women, they love white women, you're misunderstanding and deliberately misinterpreting the demographic data that's been presented several ways over the last 3 or 4 decades. So we're blaming black men for as if they have choices, when in fact they're being structurally and systematically locked out of participating in society altogether. And the root is taking advantage of that. It's taking advantage of the kind of aversion, the kind of anger, the kind of frustration that many black women feel because black men are not in their lives. They're not in their social reality. And instead of addressing that as, I wonder what happens when black men are incarcerated, or black men are abused, or black men are locked out of society, or locked out of the job force, or labor participation, they choose to say, these black men are bad.
Let me jump in here, Dr. Curry. Let me jump in here because I'm going to go over to Yvette after I bring this in. Keeping in mind that I said the incarceration rate for black men between 20 and 39 is around 7,000 to 9,000 per 100,000. It's dropped some because they putting a lot of them on anklets and sending them to grandmama house. Let's read what has happened recently with black females to give you some context. Black female, this is the article, black female prison population declines by half as white female incarceration rate soars. This is a brief section. From 2000 to 2015, the black female imprisonment rate declined by half to 100 per 100,000, or 0.1%, whereas the white female incarceration rate has only continued to rise. The current rate of white female imprisonment, 52 per 100,000 white women, outnumbers the number of black women by about 2.5 to 1. Now, understand this. When we move over to wages, the only group that sees either flat or inverted realities between men and women is African Americans. So, you know, the whole gamesmanship has been to compare black women's dollar, how much they earn a dollar, against white men. But they failed to do it against black men, let alone include prisoners. Now, the reason why it matters to include prisoners when it comes to black male, because you have 8% of the population at zero. Hold on. Normally, you only have, as with black women, 0.1, 0.2% of the population incarcerated, so you don't need to count those people, and you still get a reasonably good number. You don't. It doesn't harm the number. It doesn't skew the number. But by cutting out the 8%, you flaw the number. So for black men to black women, my findings have shown black women make 62 cents on the dollar for every white man, and black men are at around 67%. That's without the prisoners. But if you add the prisoners in, we actually make less than you. So we're the only group that inverts. We get no inheritance, and we're sitting up here talking about what kind of man I deserve and what he should buy for me and what he should. And I understand women are going to say, well, I don't expect that. Well, it's set up where there's a social norm that you got to speak that into existence. And I don't know how we got here. When we look at the BLS data, and Yvette has shown this on her show, when we look at household income, the sweet spot for black folks is right around like 20,000 or something, like 25,000 a year. So the idea, I think it's like 3-4% of black families make more than 125, 130,000. That's together the whole house. So this idea, I deserve a 6-figure man, it's all built out of such fantasy. Yvette, you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, but let me speak to one thing before I speak to that. Part of the criticism I know that's going to happen after this show is that we are being somehow divisive. And really what we're doing is pointing out a division that already exists that shouldn't exist, right? Based on the data, there shouldn't be this division that exists, which says that, well, basically black men ain't nothing and they don't do what they're supposed to do. And the problems that black women have in their lives, whether it be their daddy or their boyfriends or not finding a husband, is because of some individual choice that black men make to just, I don't want to be around black women. And you see that also through kind of the lens of celebrity. You see it through the lens of, you see a black male celebrity with a white woman, and automatically all these black men choose, according to you, are choosing white women. So what I want to say, I just want to say that what we are dealing with is the division that's already there that shouldn't be there.
Let me jump in here. Let me jump in here before you finish, because I want you to finish the thought. Let me say two things. I'm watching the chat. Thank you so much. Dash Radio, press the Dash Talk app, share this, and then also if you could use the super chat, please get in the dialogue. We having a conversation. We building here. But Erlene Beeman in the chat, she said, I've never known a black man that went to prison for child support. You ain't heard of Walter Scott? Like, come on. Like, it's almost like what we have is a critical mass of black people that don't know other black people's lives. And I'm talking about massive numbers of black men that are going to jail for child support and to not know one. Like, what kind of world are we in where that's closed off to your world? But then, like, you can speak for black folks. And so, like, you can't call a black man a deadbeat. And I'm not saying that Erlene said this. She didn't. But I'm saying, and not know what the life is like to be running from child support. And he literally jumped out of that car and was running from child support. And when we go to it, Yvette, I want you to finish, but I'm going to tell you this. The New York Times did a study that blew the spot up. Not the New York Times. Raj Chetty did it out of Harvard. And the New York Times covered it, Upshot, Emily Badger. And what they showed, and everybody got so mad, is what me and Dr. Curry are talking about. It showed that the extensive data shows punishing reach of racism for black boys. Even when children grow up next to each other with parents who earn similar incomes, black boys, this is from the New York Times, fare worse than white boys in 99% of America. And the gaps only worsen in the kinds of neighborhoods that promise low poverty and good schools. According to the study led by researchers at Stanford, Harvard, and the Census Bureau, income inequality between blacks and whites is driven entirely by what is happening among these boys. Though black girls and women face deep inequality on many measures, black and white girls from families with comparable earnings attain similar individual incomes as adults. Yvette, can you finish your thought and bounce all that in there?
Well, not. I'm finished with that thought. But here's what we have to do. We got to stop trying to have it both ways, right? And here's what we do as black women. So I'll have a black woman tell me, Yvette, you don't understand what it's like to be a darker skinned black woman because you light skinned. Okay, I accept that. But if I say, well, you're right, I don't have a dark skinned woman's experience, but I also don't have a black man's experience, you'll stop me there and say, no, we all black the same. We all black the same. Well, wait a minute. We both black women, so we have more in common in terms of how we interact with the world than black men do. So you want to say that you have a different experience from me that makes me advantage, but you don't want to say that we both have a different experience from black men that makes us both advantage. Because when a police officer sees us, most of the time, they don't see a physical threat the same way that they see a physical threat from a black man. Just off the basis of who we are, how we're with muscularity, everything, and all these years of painting black men as monsters and rapists and all that stuff to lay the groundwork for lynchings and hangings. So one of the things that has to happen, we just got to get honest as black women.
I agree. And what's interesting about it is that the next argument that comes is like black men are more violent or more prone to crime. None of it is supported. I'll have Dr. Kirk speak on that in a second. But what they actually found is that, first of all, I'm gonna tell you this. You can look for your own state. They don't even build prisons for women. We all got 2 arms and 2 legs and can stab somebody, hit somebody. We see it on World Star, but they don't even have prisons for women. If they don't have enough space. They would have to convert male prisons to female prisons, which is hard in and of itself. So how did that happen? We live in a post-feminist society, an equal society. How do they not have prisons if women decide to do crimes? Now let's go back and see how that affects sentencing. So if I'm a judge and you do the same crime as a male, y'all can be in the same house. I don't have a place to put you. Now hold on. If I'm a judge and I decide to sentence you anyway, when I send you to the prison, you won't do the time because they'll kick you out because they don't have space to hold you. Now understand this. There was a study that came out of Michigan, I believe, that showed that men get 62% longer time for the same crime than women. Well, if we know that happens generally, and we know black men are at around 7,000 per 100,000, and white men are at 1,000 per 100,000, we could easily extrapolate that black men are getting sentences 300% higher than black women. Black men are getting sentences 300, 400% longer than black women for the same crimes. How's everybody okay with that? Now, I don't want more women to go to jail, but I'll tell you this, as long as it's just black men going to jail, this system won't change. Dr. Curry, can you speak on that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the problem is our sensibility. There's no one that has a theory explaining why black men are vulnerable to incarceration based on their melanin. And this speaks to Yvette's point. We're all socialized, even in the academy, as opinion makers, policymakers, to think that what happens to black men is generic, that it only belongs to racism. So when you see these disparities between black men and black women that revolves around the male category, we simply ignore it. That was, in fact, one of the responses that they had to the Chetty study, that there was no language to explain why black men were doing worse than black women, because everything in our politics, which is overwhelmingly feminist and intersectional, has no vulnerability for the black male category. So when you point to structural deficits like them not building women's prisons, like black men's downward mobility, like black men falling out the education system, the mortality and low life expectancy of black men, people say, well, that's just due to racism. And then when black women outperform black men in those very same demographic categories, there's no way to account for black female advantage or female advantage generally over men in this society or in our theories, so we just ignore it. And the effect of ignoring that kind of disparity is you see black men constantly falling down to the bottom. And this is one of the things that I said about the attack that a lot of black feminist and intersectionality theorists had about My Brother's Keeper. They're claiming that it was patriarchal because there was a program built to try to bring black men to the level of their female counterparts. And my question has always been, how do we understand patriarchy? If the argument is that black men are below black women and there's a program to make them equal to black women, then what does it mean for black men to be patriarchs? The patriarch is superior. The patriarch has power, advantage, and resources. They control economics and wages over female bodies. That's not the case. That's not the position that black men have ever been in this society. So when we target these programs, when we look at these theories coming out of the root, we have to ask ourselves, are these people actually working from black reality and black experience, or are these people pushing and making a profit off of the propaganda that demonizes, criminalizes, and basically condemns black men for not being in the same kind of social class and not having the same kind of respectability as victims that we know that white people have used against us for centuries.
Let's look at this. Yvette, you know, this week on Monday, the Supreme Court, I believe, came down with a decision on gambling. I did a video on it. You did a show on it. I believe it's gonna have a drastic negative impact on black communities. I believe the sports gambling is gonna bring about something that none of us are prepared for. You know, the selfie video game world, y'all not ready for this gambling. When we look over, we see in the same week that this young black girl basically, you know, took the Me Too so far that she lied on this foster football player. Got on the stand and started crying about how she created a whole plan to destroy his life and to basically blame him for assault that didn't happen. I mean, and I think that right now we're in dangerous territory. That's my point of bringing those two stories up, because we also have today African-American woman. I believe that she's horrible for what she did. I don't care about the door being blocked or anything. Jumps off the building with her 7-year-old. Come on, Yvette, you want to speak to those things?
Well, I think what you have to come to, if you want to talk about feminism, that means equality. And you can't really have equality of like opportunity and equality of all the good stuff, but not have equality of responsibility. So I heard you say that you don't want women to go to jail more, you know, or black women to go, and I understand that. But if we're talking about, and I don't want to see any black people, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't see any black people go to jail like we've seen black men go to jail or black women, none of that. But if you're going to talk equality, there has to be an equality. There has to be a real equality. You can't speak about it in a way where yeah, I did it, but women get probation and men don't go to jail. Because what happens is, what you find is that black men go to jail, and then when they come out of jail, it's just like nobody cares. And somebody said, well, you must have did something to go there. So we all need to go there. And see, then we all need to realize that you don't really have to do nothing to go to jail. Did you realize you ain't got to really do nothing to go to jail? I just did this one thing. Because we don't really on a mass level, we don't understand like the little stuff, the little wrong moves you can make. Because listen, I've been stopped by the cops, and I've used this story before. I've been stopped by the cops like 3 times. I ain't never been given a ticket. And it's one, me being a woman, is other part, I'm a light-skinned woman. You look at me, one parent might be white. You don't know. There are a lot of things that go into play. But as black women, we don't really want to afford that. There's another level to the propaganda around black men, and why the data looks the way it does, and why that community, why there's so many quote-unquote missing black men. We don't want to deal with white supremacy. We want to be like, you must have did something.
Let me say this. In a second, I'm going to go to commercial break, and we're going to go into some specific articles from The Root and one from Madame Noire. But before I do that, what you also got to understand is that these female prisons are basically they're low offender type prisons, the way they set them up. You know, they did a video, I might cut it in on the YouTube version on CNN, and what they showed is like the female prison was like, they was doing the electric slide. They had pictures of their kids up. It was the only side that had like learning centers. And then when they asked the sheriff, you know, why the men don't have it, they just said that they don't know. They don't have no reason. They just tend to be more violent. How can you claim equality and not look at that? That they basically are setting the men up to be recidivists, to come back to prison. That they are setting the men up in a way that they aren't setting the women up. If we're going to claim equality in NCAA sports, which we should, women should be allowed to play sports. How are we not making that same argument for prisons in terms of fairness in prisons? Take all the learning centers out, and I believe you should put them all in. If we don't have money for everybody to get one, nobody should get one. And I don't think we're ready to be honest about that discussion. And you know, on the other side, we're going to get into 3 articles, 2 from The Root, 1 from Madame Noire, and I'm looking forward to hearing what my guests have to say. We'll be right back on Dash Radio. Press the Dash Talk app. What up, y'all? I'm back. Dash Radio. Press the Dash Talk app, or you can catch this on Tone Talks, YouTube streaming. I got my guest, Dr. Tommy Curry from Texas A&M, author of Man Not. Pick up his book. man not. It is powerful. And then also I have political commentator Yvette Carnell. We're here talking about hashtag the Root articles, the parody Twitter thing that went around attacking the Root for the kind of articles that they've been writing. Right now, what I'm going to get into is specific articles that I've seen on the Root and just kind of look at who's writing, like, what? You know, just what, Dr. Curry? You know, the first one I'm going to talk about is this article I read called Grownish Explores the Truth of Dating as a Black Woman. Grownish, the show. This is a show about a little girl that just left high school. So I don't know how that's about black women. You know, one of the things I noticed, and we've had this discussion, you know, too many, I talk to young women that are in their 40s talking about, I love Insecure because it reminds me of my dating experience. You 40 though. The show is about somebody that's in their 20s. And so it's weird because like this show is about some kid stuff. And the title of it is Grownish Explores the Truth of Dating as a Black Woman. It should say Dating as a Black Girl. Now, nonetheless, I'm going to share it because it's just wrong. It says the article is wrong. Malcolm X told no lies when he said that the most disrespected person in America was the black woman. When it comes to dating, no one gets less love than black women because everyone is checking for the black girl, for the girl who looks black, but no one wants the girl who is actually black. I don't even understand the writing here, but when you pull up the OkCupid data, I did it for the Issa Rae show, nobody want to date black people. One of the problems we have is that we come from slaves and nobody wants to talk about that. Everybody wants to push that into a closet, but then ask for all the things that come from lineage and inheritance. Just recently, a study out of Michigan showed that the most important characteristic for your wealth today is your grandparents. So that means that if you got two black people in the room and their grandparents didn't get the New Deal, we both struggling because we're black. So when you look at this OkCupid data, Dr. Curry, you know, when you had men grading women, basically Asian men graded black women negatively, -23. Asian Latino men graded black women -19. White men graded black women -17. And when you looked at women grading black men, it was the same thing. Asian women graded black men -20. Latina women graded black men -15. White women graded black men -9. There's this mythology that black men are a demand product and choosing to date all these other women, and I'm the victim, and where does this come from? All this and with no data.
Well, look, I mean, you know, we talk about this a lot, Tom. You know, this is scapegoating. All right, again, this is the product of what happens when you take stereotypes about black men, which are based in Moynihan-type ideas, right? The idea that black men hate black women because they do better than them, or black men hate their mothers because the fathers are not in the home, so they reject the feminine. And you put that on a world stage. You see, the problem I really have with this kind of material is, again, it doesn't look at the data or the empiricism, right? There's not enough. If every black man, like roughly 80 to 90% of black men marry black women, if every black man married a black woman, every straight black man marries a black woman, there still wouldn't be enough black men for every black woman. That's reality. And what's interesting about this is that black people have complex relationships. Not all black people are straight. So what is the realistic demand that these bloggers are trying to say that black men have? Right? Is it that every black woman deserves a black man, or is it every smart black woman deserves a black man, or what? Like, do we need to start having more black male babies? But then they'll say that devalues black female. Like, there's a demographic problem with the numbers because of incarceration, because of homicide, etc.
Let's look at Dr. Curry. Dr. Curry, what's crazy? I'm sorry for jumping in here. I know how you get.
No, go ahead.
You get rolling. The thing that's interesting about slavery is what? We all had to get it, right? Meaning, like, black females were slaves, black males were slaves. The thing about Jim Crow, and you see it in them pictures, is they wasn't holding them water hoses if you was a woman. They wasn't holding them batons regardless of your age or your gender. But somehow what they got masterful at is contorting, like, the consequence of racism down to black young males. And as a result, we digested it and swallowed it. It's kind of like the Matrix. What will they accept? What will they allow for? They won't allow for slavery. They won't allow for just Jim Crow, where they can walk around but can't buy anything. Oh, they'll accept it if we just incarcerate the young men. They'll accept that one.
Yes.
Now, so what's interesting, and the trip about it is the data is so damning. And it's weird because even in the comments, people are trying to say, it's about accountability, how we find a middle ground. This is not about middle grounds. This is about looking at a 10,000 per 100,000 incarceration rate and understanding this group is being set up to fail. Understand that I said black women are at 100 per 100,000. That's not within range. That's like one group goes to jail and the other doesn't. I don't even understand how we live here like this. And everybody's kind of accepted it. Everybody said it's okay. And I'm not just talking about black women. Everybody, including everybody living on this. Because I'm a criminal defense attorney by trade. When you go in there, Asian people in there doing gambling, prostitution, white people in there doing fraud, everybody do crimes. But somehow I did a piece on Jodi Arias and the changing color of conviction. And I looked at Arizona at the time. And what Jeffrey Toobin from CNN said was the most poignant and ignorant comment. Well, not ignorant, poignant and telling comment. Let me say that. He said, we don't give the death penalty to people that look like her. Well, she stabbed him, shot him, kicked him, beat him. At what point do she get the death penalty? I looked at a guy named Hooper, last name Hooper, black man. He got the death penalty for just running out of a store and shooting somebody on the way out. And I feel like what we're not really seeing is like, we want black men to carry the bags of slavery. And as Yvette often says, that man ain't your reparations. You better do your politics. Look over at Damon Young with straight black men are the white people of black people. And I'm going to come to you, Yvette, after I read this section. This article came out, and it's a black man that wrote it. He's kind of a quirky guy. I'll say that. And me and Dr. Curry kind of broke down how he don't have a background to write this article. So I don't even understand it. Dr. Curry, this got shared almost like 1 million times. That's how dangerous. Yeah. That's where we're at. That an article as bad as this got shared 1 million times. And the reason why I'm saying it's bad is not based on opinion. The data in here is horrible. So you shouldn't even read that article. Let me tell you why. Okay. Reading a section. We're the ones, so we're, meaning we as black men. And this is a Root article called Straight Black Men Are the White People of Black People by Damon Young. We're the ones for whom the first black president created an entire initiative to assist and uplift. Hold on. You talking about that thing where he didn't put no money into it? You talking about that thing that nobody talks about because it's not worth anything? That what is it called, Dr. Curry? The little keeper. Oh yeah, he talking about that. That wasn't real. There was nothing there. Like to mention that in your first line shows you don't have nothing to stand on. There was no funding. It was unfunded. I talked about it with Byron Allen. No funding. When something is real, you put $1 billion into it from the government. Then you say, we're going to take extra from private sector. Let me continue on. We're the ones whose beatings and deaths at the hands of the police galvanized the community in a way that beatings and sexual assaults and deaths that those same police inflict upon women do not. I just would refute that. We're the ones whose mistreatment inspired a boycott of the NFL, despite the NFL's long history of mishandling and outright ignoring far worse crimes against black women. We are the ones who get the biggest seat at the table and the biggest piece of chicken at the table, despite the smallest contribution to the meal. None of the data supports him. I've given you the data on wealth, on incarceration. The New York Study Times, the Time study that came out of Harvard says this man doesn't know what he's talking about. He really shouldn't be writing on this site. And y'all should, as black males, really contact this site and tell them, like, hey, the New York Times came out with a study. Y'all should take this article down. Yvette, you want to say something about this article?
Well, yeah, there was a study a few years ago, probably like 3 or 4 years ago, that how religion is changing, but even amongst religious people, like black people in general, were not the worst, because he goes into a whole lot of other stuff. And the one problematic thing that I saw throughout this whole thing of like this whole the root article hashtag was like how some not near the majority, but some of it went down the lane of like homophobia, and it's just like you're just gonna play into that. You're just gonna play into their hands and just like and see these are just a bunch of dusty hoteppers, because the thing is like with most black men, what you find even there is like a level of indifference. I don't care. So the problem, the whole problem with this article though, is that again, you don't want to deal with the fact that the real problem with what's happening is the white systemic racism. You don't want to deal how that has turned the screws on black men in a way that it hasn't turned the screws on black people in general. Now, that people say, well, black women get evicted when the black men go to jail. I agree with that. This is inequality. I agree that black women suffer. But we don't have to make the false equivalence that this is the same. Like when you go to jail for life, for 20 years or whatever, there's no rebuilding from that. Like there's a new book that just came out which kind of talks about what follows people who come out of prison. There's no redemption. That's not what happens. So how are you going to call the people who are most victimized? You're going to call them the oppressors within the community? It doesn't make any sense.
I agree. Look, for those people having any trouble with the sound, please go to Dash Radio, press the Dash Talk app. Also, I'll repost this with the full sound on the video later on. We're going to continue this discussion, and what I'm seeing is, Dr. Curry, I'm gonna have you speak to this article, but there's a second article that came out, and it came out of The Root, written by another black man, a guy that writes kind of interesting articles altogether. Anyway, a sincere apology to the strong black men being attacked by The Root articles, by hashtag The Root articles.
Yeah, I
don't even understand what you're talking about. That's not what it's an attack on The Root. So what are you saying? So Dr. Curry, speak to maybe how you. I don't know if you got a chance to see that article. And then maybe
I did.
Speak to the larger
wrote it
and speak to the straight black man article.
Yeah, look, the problem with Damian Young, and I've said this before in several interviews, is dishonest, right? It's wrong, it's dishonest, and it's scapegoat. And again, it always amazes me that somehow bloggers know more about black men and black realities than social sciences and criminology.
Yep.
This is a ploy, right? This is a ploy. And notice, this is what I'm constantly saying with Twitter. If the argument is going to be about domestic abuse, which all of this stuff usually ends up getting about, so when you start talking about, well, how are black men patriarchs, people start off with all this rhetoric, and ultimately it comes down with black men are violent, right? Black men abuse women and they abuse children. Mm-hmm. That is a wrong-headed way to interpret the kinds of violence that are happening in our community. Because black men are not the only perpetrators of violence in our households nor our community. These things vary based on neighborhoods, segregation, poverty, and the rate of joblessness in those communities. So what we have Mr. Young doing is building up a caricature of black men that says, hey, black men are violent. Hey, black men, if they're straight, are violent. Which makes no sense to me, because I don't know when sexual orientation who wrote the study of sexual orientation leads to deviance.
He don't cite to any studies. These articles,
there is no study, so nobody knows what he's talking about. So the force of the article comes about because you're supposed to believe that straight black men are bad. And the problem I have with this is the reason you believe that is because you think straight black men are rapists and they're the ones that are abusing women. Because there's no delineation in the literature. Right, because the literature actually goes the other way. Because of social stigma, a lot of the work now is saying that the reason that you're seeing more higher rates of intimate partner violence among same-sex couples is because they have to deal with the stigma of the society and the homophobia of the society that rejects and marginalizes them. And this leads to a strain and more violence within interpersonal relationships. But the same thing would be the case for black people. There's decades of data that says that part of the reason that black people and black men and women have black male and female conflict is because of the stigmas of racism. But Mr. Young doesn't see that. Mr. Young doesn't care about that, because when Mr. Young wrote this article, he already knew that there would be women and gender studies departments across the country, and there'll be the Bell Hooks Institute ready to invite him in with open arms. He doesn't have to be correct. He has to just fit the propaganda. Yeah. And I think that this is the problem with the apologetic that Mr. Harriet wrote. Generally, I think that he's one of the more balanced people sometimes on the route. But it's inaccurate to suggest that the only black people in the world that know what black people are feeling are the black people that are writing for the Root. That they're the ones that can criticize what black people are doing. And all the straight black men who are offended, well, they just have their feelings hurt like white people when they're criticized about racism. But the difference between those two things are immense. White people have had laws, policies, this huge event called slavery that literally made a nationwide policy that said the color of your skin made you above everyone else. And they're saying that a group of men who have been on a downward trend, that the Harvard study, the Chetty study shows have for decades been falling below their female counterparts, are not dealing with disadvantage, but just hurt feelings. It's a gross misrepresentation that encourages the black community to believe that the pathology of straight black men, this essential quality, this cultural and biological quality of being straight and a black male, is the cause of all the problems of the black community. There's no articles where they're talking about poverty's relationship to child abuse. There's no articles talking about black women and single black women and their disproportionate risk for child abuse. There's no articles about black men committing into a partner violence because of previous trauma related to incarceration or rape or none of the things that are actually written about our communities, about our families, by scholars who are interested in the material is coming through the Root. What the Root is doing is making profit off of scapegoating black men the same way the society does in general. That's what the hashtag is trying to get at. And
again, people, go to the Dash Radio app, press the Dash Talk app, and you can actually hear the sound. I'm gonna refix this when I put it up on YouTube. Don't worry about it. We're gonna keep this discussion going. And Yvette, we're coming around the corner because I want to make sure that we don't just stop at the Root, because it's not just the Root. This is a larger, kind of like easy sale. Nobody wants to deal with white supremacy, so we just gonna attack the black dudes. And that's the problem with this whole middle ground concept. I'm just not seeing the space. I think it was wrong how black men use this in terms of homophobia. But when I look at this thing in terms of trying to find a middle ground between allowing black women to feel like victims when contrasted black men, is really a hard push. And I look at this article from Madame Noir written by an African woman, and she said, "Why I stopped dating black American men when I decided I was ready for marriage." And none of it makes any sense. And I've shared this before on the Issa Rae show, but I wanted to bring it in here because it's perfect context, and I want to go a little further in breaking it out and give Yvette a chance to speak on it. I had exclusively dated black men up to that point, finding commonality in the fact that we were both black and both American born. But my perception of marriage and relationships, but I'll just stop for a second you can't find commonality with me just because you're born in America. My lineage is where you find commonality, and the understanding of why my lineage affects my ability to be stable. See, this is the problem right now, is that we ain't been talking in lineage, and we now live in a moment where lineage matters the most. I don't think enough people understand America to be here. I don't think enough of our people understand America to be here. So what they doing is just making up the boundaries of what race and relationships and marriage is going to be. I put it on my page. It's a lot of 40-year-olds out here divorced after 2 years of marriage, and it ain't widows or abusers. It just didn't work out because them dreams didn't match your pocketbook and your lineage. And so I come back to it, and I'm reading the rest of this article, and I'm going to break her down. But my perception of marriage and relationships had undoubtedly been shaped by my West African father and my American baby boomer uncle. Let's start with the uncle. I'm pulling up a chart on YouTube, but at the same time, what I'm going to do is just break down. We live in one of the most unequal times in terms of wealth in the history of America, let alone possibly the world. This is according to Thomas Piketty, famed economist. When you look at this chart done by Ray Diallo that I'm going to pull up, the last time that the top 0.1% had the same wealth share out of all of America's wealth as the bottom 90 was during the Depression. We're at that point today again. So just being clear, during the Depression, I think the bottom 90 and the top 0.1 both had like 20% of the wealth. Today, the bottom 90 and the top 0.1 both have about 23% of the wealth. They're not supposed to have the same amount of wealth. So all your failures are a combination of lineage coming from slavery and Jim Crow and timing. So what do I mean? In 1980, we had the widest spread between the top 0.1 and the bottom 90, and it wasn't in the top 0.1's favor. The top 0.1 had about 7% of all the wealth due to taxation, programs, everything to make a middle class. The bottom 90 had 35% of the wealth. That's why your granddaddy had a house. That's why your granddaddy was stable. Don't get me wrong, he went and worked at the garbage man job, and I commend him for that, just like in fences. But being at the garbage man job only works if they sharing the wealth with the garbage men. So you don't know what you're talking about, lady. And I'm saying this to a lot of young women that also are saying the same thing about, why can't you be like my granddaddy? Because I wasn't born in 1958. I was born in 83. Come on, do you know where you live? You got to know where you live before you start your first date. Otherwise, you're just rambling. The second thing I was going to say to you was talking about this West African like parent. We not in a developing country. We in a first world country. We in a first world country where you got to compete against wealth like we've never seen before. You're telling me what your father did in a country that needs roads, new roads built. It don't make no sense. Yvette, can you speak to this?
No, I think you're exactly right. I think it doesn't make sense. I think you have people who what do I want in a mate without even looking at, first of all, what does this country do to a mate, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think we all understand if you go out with a date with a black woman and she says, I just got laid off, there's okay, I kind of get it. Man, I'm sorry that happens to you. There's kind of a, okay, I kind of get it. But with on the other side, it's kind of, no, you have to have X and Y and Z and whatever. And so, it's kind of like Zoe said, it's kind of like dating a checklist as opposed to dating someone with a full understanding of what it means to come from African slaves. Not African, West African just came over here, you immigrated here, but slaves in terms of what
chattel slaves,
in terms of our inability to build wealth when America was growing into the first world, the greatest power in the world as it is today.
Let me finish the article a little bit, and I'm gonna let Dr. Curry speak on it. I was expecting the men, this is her words, the words of somebody who don't understand America much. I was expecting the men I was dating to mimic a culture and generation that they had no relation to. No, you were expecting these men not to be in modern America and come from slavery. Just say that. Then we know where you stand. And I'm saying this to not only this African woman, but also any black woman who comes from slavery that says the same thing. Because we're in a time where you basically, by coming from slavery and coming from Jim Crow, it locks you out of the things you need to be stable. A new article came out yesterday that said 40% of America doesn't have the wealth to access the main things of being middle class. 40% of general America. Well, we know the data. Middle black family worth $1,400. Middle white family worth $140,000. Well, I could easily see that being 75 or 80% for black folks. How and what are you using to create your framework? Zoe Williams, relationship guru, he says, your partner is not your battery. You can't create a list to cope. You cannot create a list of standards to cope with the lack of your own lineage in having wealth. Dr. Curry, can you speak on this for a second?
Look, absolutely. The first thing is that your point's extremely salient because the data that shows why black people, especially black men, are marrying later in life is predominantly economic. It's that black men don't feel with their employment chances that they could actually sustain and take care of a family. So a lot of the decisions that a lot of these people are suggesting black American men don't want to get married, don't want to take care of women, are responses to their economic vulnerability and their financial positionality in this economy. The other thing I would say is that there's an extreme misandry involved in the question. And let me explain that just a little bit real quickly. The argument that she's making suggests that the ideal type of man that she would pursue is one who basically wants a nuclear family. The nuclear family is the basis of Western patriarchy in the United States and other capitalistic societies. So her argument is that black men are somehow lesser men, less mature men, because they're not able to provide the same kind of patriarchal structure, both culturally and economically, than white men can, or other wealthy Africans can. The problem with that, though, is that that's a contradiction to the mainstream line that says that black men are patriarchs. If the argument is that you want black men to take on the roles that are traditionally associated with middle-class white men or wealthy black or African men, and they don't do that, that's suggesting that somehow they're lesser men for that. But they've adjusted to a world where they don't have the same political, cultural, or economic tools as white patriarchs. And then because they're not serious about marrying you, you then claim that they're patriarchal and don't like you and want to dominate you. You can't keep having it both ways. At some point, there has to be a reconciling of the evidence and what the evidence is telling you about black men and the expectations that many of these middle-class black women have of black men. They're not angry about patriarchy. They're angry that they don't have a black male patriarch that's going to solidify them in economic and cultural positions like white women have. And we're not honest about that. We keep saying that anytime a middle-class black woman speaks, she's speaking from the position of liberation. No, she's speaking from a class bias that says she deserves the same thing that middle-class bourgeois white America has traditionally given women for decades, which is a husband, a house, 2 kids, 2.5 kids, and a white picket fence.
Dr. Curry.
Black men can't provide that because of their economic situation, white supremacy, and racism. Then they attack black men as lesser men, the same language that she's using throughout the piece.
Let me jump.
Clear about what's happening here.
Let me jump in here, Dr. Curry, because we know we're running short on time, and just say to you, man, I think we just lit this up. I wanted to have a responsible conversation, and Dr. Curry, they not middle class. Middle class in America, you better have 200,000 in net worth. Let's just be real.
Middle class aspirations.
And so, like, what I want to do is just say thank you so much for coming in. Please go to the Amazon, pick up Man Not, support Dr. Curry, and please keep pushing this video around. For Yvette, her show is on Mondays and Wednesdays. What time again, Yvette?
9:15 Eastern Standard Time.
Every Monday and Wednesday, and it's always fire. Breaking Brown. That's where you can get it. Breaking Brown on YouTube, or type in her name, Yvette Carnell. Thank you so much to both of you guys for tuning in. Again, let's have this discussion. Hashtag the Root Articles. It has some relevance, but just got to be framed right. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Tone Talks.